Hello friends, in this lecture we are going to see how we can manage databases, and specifically the database that LPIC 1 certification emphasizes is MySQL. Now you might be wondering what MySQL stands for. Well, SQL, it stands for Structured Query Language, and this My is the name of a girl, and she was the daughter of co-founder of MySQL, Michael Whitenius. Now, while databases are managed by people who are called as database administrators, and this is a specialized field, but from Linux administration point of view, you should know a couple of things. Will not be going deep into the management database, but we should know how we can install it, how we can how we can create a database, and a little bit management of that. By default, this MySQL database does not come installed on either of Enterprise Linux, neither on Debian-based distributions. So for this lecture, I'll be using Ubuntu, and if you need to install MySQL in Ubuntu, it's pretty simple. You just need to give the command, of course, with either sudo or in root privileges, apt get install, and then MySQL dash, so say it's SQL MySQL server, and MySQL works on a client server model. So once you install MySQL server, it will also install the necessary client as well, and client is required to connect to the server. This server could be on the same machine or on a separate machine. If it's on a separate machine, you can connect to it by giving the IP address and port if it is listening on some other port. But if it is running on the same port, on the same machine, then you simply need to type in MySQL, and then you will be able to get connected to the MySQL server. So without further ado, let's get on to the terminal. Let's see how we can do some of the management with MySQL database. Alright, so here I am at Ubuntu terminal, and once you need to install it, you will issue the command for Ubuntu. For CentOS, it's the same. You need to give in sudo yum install and MySQL, and you might need to type MySQL d, means MySQL daemon. But in Ubuntu, you simply need to type in, if you are going through root, then sudo will not be required, but if you are going through a user, then you put in sudo, and then afterwards you type in apt get install and MySQL, so MySQL and server, and you press enter. And once the process of installation will get completed, it will give you a root username and password option so that you can get connected to the database, so that unauthorized access is not should not be allowed. Also, I can also show you that if you forget the root password, then there are two ways to do it. One is simply you shut down the database, and I'll show you how to do that. But this thing that I wanted to show you is you need to type in sudo, and then afterwards dpackage reconfigure, and then afterwards you need to type in MySQL and server. Give in the password, and maybe I need to type it again, or maybe server is running. Let's just see if the server is running. So I type in sudo service MySQL stop. Probably this was running, that's why I did. Now it's in stop condition, and if we have a look at the status of that, we see that it's stopped. Now let's try to reconfigure it again one more time, or maybe server dash 5.5, so 5.5, and we get this screen. Now I wanted to show you this screen, reason because once you do the installation and the installation reaches to a finishing point, you will get this screen where it will ask you to set the root password. So I just wanted to show you this, that this is the only interactive session that you will require once you are installing the MySQL server. Also, if you forget the root password, then you can use the same command dpackage reconfigure MySQL server and the version number. And of course, you need to give this command after shutting down the MySQL database, and then you can reset the root password. There is another way to set the root password, but I'll show you that one at the end of the lectures. So once we have got our database installed, it will be in the running state by default. If it is not, you can simply type in this command service MySQL and start, and will get started. So to connect to the database, the command that you need to use is, let me just turn this on because it's not, I believe it's not in the running state. So let's that, okay, so it's already running. So once we reconfigured it, it put the database in running, which it says over here as well. So the command is MySQL, and then you put in the user by which you want to connect. By default, there is only one user, which is root. And then we put in -p, and when we can type the password, whatever it is. But from security point of view, it's better that we do not type the password. Rather, we let the system ask or query for the password. So I press enter over here, and now it is asking for the password. So the password that I just set, I give in, and now we are in the MySQL or SQL query prompt. And over here, we can play with the databases. Now to see that what are the databases currently are available in this environment. So I type in show databases, and after each and every command in SQL, we need to break that command using semicolon. I had pressed enter without putting in the semicolon. I could have done that over here as well after databases. But if you do not do that, you will come to the next line. You can continue giving in the commands, and once you think that your command is finished, you need to put in the semicolon to finish the command and execute it. So I press enter, and we see that we have got 4 databases by the name of information schema, word, MySQL, and performance schema. This word schema, this I have created myself before the start of this lecture, but these 3, information, MySQL, and performance, they are here by default. A lot many times you will see people typing commands like this one, all capitals, and then databases, and then pressing enter. And many times you will also see that actual commands like this show, this is the command, and the arguments or the values that it takes will be typed in small. Now there is no requirement as such that you put in the commands in capital and values in small. In fact, you just need to remember that the values itself, I'm not talking about the arguments, I'm talking about the values. So if value starts with capital or it has got some capital letters, then of course that is case sensitive. But otherwise these are not case sensitive. It's just that it is sometimes becomes easier to see if command is capital and the arguments are in small, so that we know that which portion of the command that we type in or SQL command, then which portion is the command portion and which is the arguments portion. Now once we are here at this prompt, let's first try to create a database by typing in create and then database, and after that whatever database you want to name. So let's call this one as test and semicolon, press enter. Now if I do show databases again, we see that now we have got another database by the name of test. Now what I'm going to do is, let's create a user and let's give that user all the privileges so that he can manage this database test. He would not be able to manage these databases, but we can give him the permissions to manage these as well. But for the sake of practical implementations, normally users that belong to a particular database, only they can access the database and not the other ones. So let's create the user and let's give him access to access this database as well. So the command that I'm going to use is grant on or grant all on. Then we need to type in the database name test.static. It means that everything that relates to all the tables and values that relate to the desktop database, the user will get permissions to change and manage all of those values. And afterwards space, then we need to type in 2 and then the username. So at the moment I am going to define the username. So let's call this test user, and the values you see that I'm putting in are in single quotes. And afterwards, in order to give the password, that what should be the password, we can type in identified by, and then the password field, let's just call this password as ABCD and press enter. Now we see that it has given the message that query was okay. Now if I get out of this database and let's try to connect this one now instead of root, because root is all mighty and all privileged level user, let's try to connect using test user that we have just created. So I press enter and I put in ABCD and now we are again connected. And now if I type in, let's say, show databases, now we see that this information schema which is available to all the users, and afterwards only this database is available to be changed by this user test user, and as compared to the root user who was able to access word and performance schema and all the other schemas that would be available in database. So that's, I just wanted to show you how you can create your own user and give them privileges. Now let's try to connect again using the root. So once we are connected, I'm at the MySQL prompt. Now you also need to remember that once you execute a command in MySQL, it will not ask you for any permission, it will simply execute it. So there are some very, very dangerous commands that you just need to be careful while you're executing it. For example, the database that I've just created by the name of test, let's say if it is holding 1,000,000 records of information, that all information is sensitive. But if I execute this command drop database and then the name of the database, which is test, and I execute this command, that database is gone. And if I don't have a backup of that, then it means that I just got myself fired. So I type in show databases and press enter, and we see that that database is no more there. So let's create that one more time, which is here, and we have got it back. Now once you have created a database, you would like to insert values in there, and the way to do that is you need to create tables, and in those tables you will create variables, and against those variables you will add in values. So to create a table, you need to type in create and then the keyword is table, and afterwards you name the table whatever it is. So let's just call this table as, and also before I continue, let me just complete over here that if you have got multiple databases, then you need to select that which database you are going to work on. So to do that, we need to type in, let's say, use test and semicolon, and now it says the database change. Now we are able to perform operations on database test. And if I type in, let's say, select, this means everything, this static means everything. And now from, let's say, or instead of doing that, let's just simply say show tables. So we see at the moment there is no table, so let's try to create one. So type in create and then the keyword is table, and afterward whatever name we want to give to that table. For example, let's just say field 1. How about that? So field 1, and then start the parentheses, and then we need to give the argument. So this is the name of the table, and in that table, if we have got like table like, let me just come out of this one. So it's like in this way, we have created this database by the name of test, and in that test we can create multiple tables. So these could be the tables. So let's say this is the table that I'm talking about. In that table there could be many fields. So for example, field 1, then field 2, and then field 3, and in these fields there could be many rows identified by different variables. So now let's head over to the terminal again and create these fields. So let's call this field as class, and then we need to define the length of the characters that this class field can carry. So how long should this name could be? So I type in, let's say it should be variable, and the type is character. If I just type in character, then the length will be the fixed length, the length that I'm going to mention in these parentheses. But if I type in var character, it means variable character. So let's say that the name of the class field could vary up to 30, and I can just close this parenthesis, these starting parentheses over here, and put in this. Then it would add this field in there, and then we would be able to add in values. But if I want to add another field in there, like multiple fields in one table, I can do that by putting in comma. And then afterwards, let's just call it student, and also put in var character maybe 30, and close both the parentheses and press and put in semicolon and press enter. And now if I do, let's say, select everything from field 1 table and put a semicolon, we see that it is empty. But if you want to see that what is in this table, in this test table, if there are any fields or not, how to see that? Well, we can use the command describe, and then we can type in field 1 and semicolon, and we see that indeed there are two fields, class and student, that we have just created, and their type is var character. And forget about these fields, these are not need to be known to you at the moment, but just remember these things, that we can see the fields in the table using this command describe and field 1. Now if we want to put a value in there, you see at the moment we have not given any values. Like if I want to give some values to these fields, I can type in insert into, and then the table name, which is field 1, and afterwards what fields I want to insert values in. So I can do that only for one field, but let's start off with both the fields. So I type in class and then comma and then student, parenthesis close, and then the keyword values, and then I need to define values for both of these fields. So let's say that for class 1, so I type in class 1 or maybe class 1, and I need to put these in single quotes, which I'm going to do now, and then give in a comma, and afterwards student, let's say in class 1 there are 30 students, again single quotation marks and close the parentheses. Now I can add multiple values by putting in comma over here and then starting off another parenthesis and going on and on. So if I press enter by putting in semicolon first and enter, we see that query one row affected. So it means that it has added these values in one row. Now let's try to see that. Let's say select everything from field 1 and put a semicolon. And now we see that in field 1, which is the name of the table, we have got two fields, which is class and student, and both of them are having values that we have just assigned. Class 1 in class field and 30, which was supposedly the number of students, in student fields, which is over here. Now let's try to make another entry. Let's say class 2, and this time the number of students are say 25. Press enter, and now if we do a show or select to see the values of this table, we see that now we have got two rows in this field table, class 1 and class 2. Now supposedly I mistakenly put this number 25 over here. So let's try to change this one, and let's try to update this one to a different value that we wanted to have. So let's say instead of 25 I wanted to type 35, but by typographical mistake I put in 25. So let's see how we can change this value. So the way to do that is update command, update